Hello, everyone. This is Stephen Nassel with the Water Environment Federation. I want to welcome each of you to the Utility Analysis and Improvement Methodology webcast. Before we begin, I would like to quickly review a few logistics. The PDF PowerPoint presentations are now available for downloading at WEF's website and are currently available in the Handouts pane of the GoToWebinar panel. This link was included in the GoToWebinar reminder email sent an hour before the webcast and will be included in the follow-up email sent 24 hours after the webcast has ended. The follow-up email will also include a link for the webcast Professional Development Hour instructions for those eligible to receive these training credits. There are up to 1.5 PDH credits available for this webcast. You will need to complete the evaluation form to receive the PDH certificate. Your feedback on this webcast is important and helps to identify future webcast topics that are timely and helpful to you. Please follow the PDH instructions and check with your state accreditation agency on how to receive this credit. During this webcast, while you cannot speak directly to the presenters, you will have an opportunity to submit questions by typing your specific question into the GoToWebinar pane that appears on the right-hand side of your computer screen. Today's moderator will be accumulating questions and directing them to the presenters at the end. We will be recording this webcast. The webcast recording link will be included in the follow-up email sent 24 hours after the webcast has ended. If you have any additional questions after the webcast has ended, please email webcasts@wef.org. I'd like to thank Mark Poling for serving as today's moderator. Mark is the Business Strategy and Performance Systems Director at Clean Water Services. Mark, I will hand it over to you.
Great, thanks, Stephen. So it's my pleasure today to talk about the Utility Analysis and Improvement Methodology, a part of the LIFT for Management program. Thank you very much for taking the time to join us today. I think you're going to really enjoy our speakers and the information we have to present. So first, let me just cover what we're going to go over in the agenda. I've got the introduction. Scott Haskins will take us through topics and deliverables for collaborative efforts. Craig Edlin will be talking about how we document as-is processes. Getachew Melso will do analysis of business processes. Mert Muftagal will talk about designing a 2B process. Chelo Vitasevich will talk about our next steps in participation. And then finally, Scott will help us close out with a nice, we hope, a great Q&A with all of you. So this is just our speakers for today, and I'll be introducing them, giving you a little more information about them as we go through the presentations. So what is UAIM? Well, simply put, it's a way of helping our utilities deliver more values to the people we serve, to our communities, to our ratepayers. And it really is about developing best practices for business. And it's a systemic modeling of those practices. So this value-based methodology, it depends a lot on peer-to-peer collaboration between water sector utilities. And this is one of the things that's been really great about this project. And you're going to hear more about that because, as you can see from, you'll hear about our presenters from different utilities. One of the best parts has been learning from each other. We're also hoping to develop and grow the network. And so I'm going to make a pitch right now that if this interests you at all, we'd love to have you contact us about that. So if you think for a minute about how business processes work, they're executed by people working in an organization and often utilizing technology in order to deliver that work in those business processes. But, you know, a question for me has always been, do we really know how they work? Oftentimes in our organizations, while we may have excellent documentations for operating our facilities or for maintaining our facilities, the documentation and the analysis of how the business actually runs oftentimes is not there. And so if we're asked the question, are these efficient and are they effective? That can be a difficult question to answer because we haven't often looked at these business processes when it comes to how we run our utilities. So today we're going to take a dive into how an approach, our methodology, the UAIM methodology, and how we can look at these business processes and truly analyze them and then make them more effective at delivering values to our customers. And so with that, I'd like to introduce Scott Haskins. Scott has more than 40 years of experience in utility management, primarily as Deputy Director for the City of Seattle Water Department and Seattle Public Utilities. He's now at Jacobs. He provides strategic support for clients worldwide in asset management, utility improvement, benchmarking, and management consulting. Scott is a co-principal investigator for this Water Research Foundation project. So Scott, please.
Thank you, Mark. And as Mark indicated in running through the agenda, this has to do with documenting the current status of business processes, having an analysis of those business processes, creating improvements, and coming up with, in a collaborative way, what a to-be process would be for the industry. And what we did early on in the project was identify some topic areas that we wanted to pursue collaboratively across utilities. One of those, and we identified a leader for each one of these areas, a utility partner who would take us through that process in that topic area. So capital project delivery, the Environment Agency assumed the leadership of that topic area. Developing asset management plans, Metropolitan Council Environmental Services was the leader for that topic area. Enterprise Risk Management, Portland Water was the leader, and then business case evaluation and prioritization of CIP projects. And you're going to be hearing from these leading organizations in this webcast. So moving on to the next slide, you can see on the left are the utility partners that joined this effort. It's increasing. There are 17 of them listed. Today we have recently added a couple more where, as Mark said, we're encouraging still others to join as well. We're getting a lot of traction and momentum, but you can see the list of leading utilities, mostly in the United States, but also Canada and some international participants as well. So as I said, we are, and you'll be hearing about each of these major steps, development of an as-is business process model, then the analysis that happened during the course of the project and at a workshop that was held that you're going to be hearing about, and then the development of the to-be process. That's a collaborative effort to come up with something better. And all of this information, including artifacts, guidance documents, the experiences from all the different utilities, and that documentation all goes into a shared knowledge base that's available for the industry and for those that are participating. And what we're seeing are a lot of benefits that have happened as a result of this collaboration. The exchange of ideas, experiences with peers from different utilities. You can imagine if you were doing this by yourself, you're going to be improving your process, but you get the benefit in this project through this collaboration of the leading practices and the experiences of all the collaborative partners. There's, as I mentioned, an in-depth examination of the important topics and business areas. There's the access that everyone has to the knowledge base. There's a tremendous number of artifacts, guidance documents, models, metrics, and other things that are available to everyone. We are attempting to define best practice that can be applied within utilities, so you can take this collaborative effort and then apply it to your own organization and go through your own process to tailor it as needed. And what's also happened is that there have been adopted standards, international standards in a lot of cases. The International Infrastructure Management Manual, the PMI, which is the Project Management Institute standards have been used. The Institute of Asset Management standards have been used. So for the different topic areas, we've tried to pull in international standards as well as metrics for the documentation of these business processes using a standard format, standard notation, hierarchy, standard methodology, so that we're going to be able to compare across a complete value chain for our industry. So with that, I'll turn it back to Mark to introduce our next speaker.
Sorry, muted. Thanks, Scott. So our next speaker is Craig Edlund. And Craig is the Director of Asset Management for the Metropolitan Council Environmental Services in the St. Paul, Minneapolis, Minnesota metropolitan area. MCES owns and operates about $4.7 billion in infrastructure assets that protect air and water quality in the Twin Cities region. So please, Craig.
Thank you, Mark. So I'm going to be talking today about how we went about doing creating the as-is processes. And you also hear a little bit, we'll kind of reiterate some of the things that both Mark and Scott said too about how the process works and kind of what we're doing with this project. So in order to really achieve organizational goals and create value, again, people are executing processes. They're usually using some type of technology, and they're doing that within an organizational structure. I mean, that's the basics of how we do or utilize processes. And the focus of the Lift for Management UAIM project is really on understanding how we perform that work and create that value, how we document it, how we analyze it, and definitely how we can identify areas for improvement and then implement those improvements. And utilizing a methodology to understand your as-is processes or even to start mapping your processes is just kind of a first step to that improvement. Here's an example of a business process model. It was developed by the Portland Water Bureau. And Portland has a very mature asset management plan development program. And their process was chosen. Slides always have to be a problem. So their process was chosen as kind of our starting point and our baseline to start working on the as-is. So utilizing this process, the utility partners began discussing and revising it to be our working as-is as we started the project. Utility partners also brought examples of their own organizational processes and also the documentation around those processes to the discussion. So here is the as-is that was been revised from that original, and it was created during our September workshop, and that was with the input of quite a few utility partners sitting in the room. We discussed that process, and we also brought that original process map that you saw, looks like something from a Visio document. We brought that into the new standard, which is a business process modeling and notation standard, which has been used, I think, pretty much worldwide, but it is the standard that we are utilizing in this project. At the workshop, we also identified additional swim lanes. So who is actually involved in that process? And you can see those additional swim lanes that were identified, along with additional tasks and clarifications to make this model easier to follow for just about any organization. Some of the industry standards were discussed or identified by Scott when he talked. We are following those when we're doing the process, and those include the ISO 55000 standards, the International Infrastructure Management Manual, and also looking at the EPA AM training, the asset management training in the simple process. Activities throughout this process were identified and discussed during that workshop as to what was a single activity task and also what was kind of a collapsed sub-process. And you can see that the activities that have a plus sign in them are really showing what are the tasks that are actually considered sub-processes. Also identified are the possible artifacts, the documents, reports, inputs, outputs for the activities, and any information databases or business systems they would also interact with. So the pop-up example that you see here is Update Asset Risk Register. Now the artifact output of that activity is the Asset Risk Register. Now, this could be a database within a business system. It could be a Word document. It could even be a simple spreadsheet, but it is an artifact output from that activity. Also identified is, here's an example of how the systems and data can also be connected to activities. Systems such as your CMMS, GIS, a financial system, SCADA, any inventory management systems, and basically any other ERP or enterprise asset management system may be a data source for you as you're building the asset management plans. We also utilized a text notation within this process map to list out some of the examples of the data and information types that would be relevant to an AMP, such as, what is the asset hierarchy, life cycle costs, the installation dates, useful lives, definitely the condition, and also any consequence of failure or any other relevant data to an AMP. This particular process does not have a lot of decision points, unlike many other processes. It's fairly simple for decision making. But here you see an example of a decision point that can define which path this process is going to take. The example is asking the question, are the criticality and risk ratings available? And if yes, then you're going to review those for accuracy and relevance. If no, then you're going to conduct a risk assessment so that you can get that risk rating. And as you can see, both of those activities are actually sub-processes. So there's another process map that actually is going along with that. Other decision points might just be simple approval to move forward, or they might even be a go, no-go type of decision. So BPM modeling, so business process models. What do they describe? They should describe who is involved in the business process, so the swim lanes, what that workflow or the sequence of activities are, what decisions need to be made, and who's going to make those. Definitely what resources are going to be needed to complete this process, time, staff, and equipment. Some of the metrics that are impacted by the process, and also metrics that tell you how well the process is working. Should be telling you. Sorry. Also should tell you what data is required to execute and make decisions, and where the required data resides and in what systems that's residing in. So business process models can really describe what you do now, or even what you want to do in the future. And the UAIM project is introducing a standard methodology for doing that business process mapping and notation, and that really is going to provide a structure for dialogue and collaboration to internal stakeholders within your utility, but it's also a mechanism for collaboration along other utilities in the water sector who have adopted that same standard. It gives us some common language and a common format for discussions. Slide. Coming back to the water sector value model. So the water sector value model was first introduced, I think, at the beginning and first phase of the entire UAIM project. And it includes contributions from many of our utility partners who are participating in this project. It started out with a high level of what are standard business processes. Those business processes then go into a value chain made up of all the main activity areas of a process. And then those value chain elements are then developed into the process maps. And here you can see the very first iteration of the original Portland process for doing AMP development. It was first brought into the business process model and notation standard. And this is our final as-is process that we are using in our discussions as we are starting to create our to-be process, more or less. What is the future to-be process that we want to put out there for people to be able to use? Included in the overall discussion of the as-is process, the group discussed and documented what are the business objectives and outcomes required from this process, more or less, why are we even doing this process? What does it have to give us? And then what are the challenges to successfully implementing this process? So is the process we are creating meeting the required objectives and outcomes? And will the process be able to mitigate at least some, if not most, of those challenges? And a very important aspect of this project is the shared knowledge base. And that is of artifacts and examples. Is the project OneDrive site contains this documentation from Track 2 and includes all the examples and artifacts and all the mapping that is collected from utility partners. Such as the guidelines for developing an asset management plan from Portland Water. So this knowledge base, along with that peer-to-peer exchange of knowledge and ideas during all these discussions and the interactions, have been a great way for utilities to really learn from each other. We are all at different points of maturity on a journey, and everyone has a lot to share. And with that, I'm going to take it back to Mark.
Thank you, Craig. Allow me to please introduce Getachew Melso. And Getachew is the Senior Manager of Planning at DC Water. He's a licensed PE in California and Washington, DC, and is a certified program management professional. He has a wide range of consulting, project management, and program management experiences in the US, Africa, and the Middle East, spanning over 25 years. His experiences include design of water and wastewater systems, master plan and facility plan prep, condition assessment of water and sewer assets, asset management, and development of capital improvement plans. So Getachew, will you please take the next part?
Thank you very much, sir. My part of the presentation focuses on what we did at the workshop in Portland. So we had a 4-day workshop in Portland, as I said, from September 9 to September 12, 2019. At the workshop, we covered the 4 topic areas that were already introduced by prior presenters. So there were 2 days, and the 2 days were dedicated to each topic area. And each group, the team was divided into 2 groups, and each group discussed 1 topic for 2 days. On Mondays and Tuesdays, one group discussed CIP delivery, and the other group discussed managing enterprise risk. And on Wednesdays and Thursdays, one group discussed business case evaluation, and the other team discussed developing asset management plans. In preparation for the workshop, Stroman as his business process models were prepared for each topic area. And this preparation was led by a utility. And we have had several weekly and bi-weekly conference calls to discuss and share ideas and experiences. Therefore, the Stroman process models are results of collaboration among the lead utility, participating utilities, and the primary investigators. The as-is models were prepared for each of the 4 topic areas. This slide shows the various utility-led business processes ready for review at the workshop. The contents are difficult to see. However, the intent is not to show you specifics, but to explain what was prepared for the workshop. In addition, various other documents such as artifacts and reports contributed by participating utilities prior to the workshop were used. One example of this is the as-is model for the CIP delivery. The lead utility for this topic area is Team 2100 UK Environmental Agency. At this meeting, prior to the meeting for the workshop, state of the development of the processes and documentation of both processes and artifacts were discussed. Other CIP delivery processes came from other utilities such as the Metropolitan Council of Environmental Services, Toho Water, and Metro Vancouver. Other participating utilities have also posted several documents on the project SharePoint site. These include the artifacts. Before the workshop, we had about 129 artifacts. And then others include business process models, guide documents, and final prepared documents. And this, as earlier mentioned, this gave us a lot of opportunity to know what is being practiced by several utilities. So this basically increased the body of knowledge that is becoming bigger and bigger as we move ahead with the program. Each lead utility led discussions on the strawman process, and discussions focused on review of key identified processes or variances and key artifacts as documented in the strawman. Workshop attendees took part in the discussions and shared their experiences and ideas. Artifacts shared prior to the workshop were used to facilitate the discussions as well as to highlight valuable practices. The artifacts and discussions informed participants of business processes, key activities, roles and responsibilities, decision points and technologies used by participating utilities in each topic area. Some of the artifacts mentioned at the workshop include those from Team 2100, Metro Vancouver, Portland Water, Kansas City Water, Toho Water Authority, Great Lakes Water, and Metropolitan Council of Environmental Services. A full list of artifacts are available at the project SharePoint site. One example of the business processes is the business case evaluation process or topic area. This slide shows the as-is process, which is the bright section at the center, with input collected during the discussions to the left and to the right. We revised the strawman version of the process models. Participants agreed that some of the process components are utility dependent, and hence keeping them more generic and at a high level was necessary. And this gives flexibility for adoption by utilities for their specific business or organizational environment and culture. After the strawman process is revised, participants in each topic area identified challenges in implementing those processes for each respective topic area. As a result, a list of challenges were created. The challenges were also mapped to business models. The list of challenges were then assigned to either people, processes, and technologies in the vertical, and to either strategic, tactical, and operational levels of an organization in the horizontal rows of a 3x3 challenge matrix. A similar chart was developed for each of the 4 topic areas. The one that you see here is for the BCE process. Similar type of 3x3 challenge map was produced for each of the 4 topic areas. As the next step, participants identified key business goals for each topic. These goals address the purpose of each component of the business process. As a result, a list of business goals were created for each topic area. An example of that is the one that you see here on the screen, developed the list of goals for business case evaluations. So why we do business case evaluations? And we posted, we brainstorm ideas and questions, and we post them on the flip charts. And also we showed the business process, Roman business processes on the site so that people can relate the goals and the process components. And finally, we listed the business goals for each of the processes. How do we measure our performance? How do you know to what extent we have achieved or exceeded the goals? The last part of the discussion was identification of performance matrices. Similar to what we did for business goals and challenges, a Strawman map of processes was posted to help facilitate the discussions on performance matrices. Each performance matrix mentioned was associated with the appropriate business goal. So as an example, here what you see is BCE matrices for performance matrices for business case evaluations. Flip charts were used to capture matrices during the brainstorming sessions. When a matrix is mentioned, it's also discussed which process impacts this metric. In addition, a list of AWWA matrices were used for a quick reference and to check which of the AWWA matrices are relevant to any of the identified business goals. Finally, a list of matrices was created for each topics. This completes my presentation, and thank you. I will turn it back to Mark.
Great, thank you, Getachew. Please allow me to introduce Mert Muftago. And Mert is an engineer with the Asset Management Branch of Portland Water Bureau. In his previous employment, Mert has implemented asset management programs in water and wastewater utilities since 2007, with a professional objective of reducing the gap between the theory and practical implementation of asset management. Mert has also been a co-instructor for in-class courses on fundamental and advanced asset management practices for water and wastewater utilities in the past. So Mert, will you please take us through the next section?
Absolutely. Thanks, Mark. And good morning / good afternoon, everyone. So I'm going to go ahead and start and build upon what my other topic leads has covered so far, and do a little bit more discussion on how it actually went, how the thing went down in the trenches. Here we go. So here is a one-slide summary of the main steps involved that took us from the development of the initial as-is workflow to where we ended up, where we are currently on the project, and what we're planning to do in the near future. So initially, as you heard, that the leads were assigned based on their experience on the topics covered with their respective organizations, and then leads basically took the lead and developed the initial draft, as Getachew referred to as the straw man, and then it was a little bit of an exercise of holding a bunch of team meetings over the webinar environments, where initial comments were received, and we could actually go ahead and develop a revised version of the as-is in preparation for the awesome in-person workshop we held in Portland at the Clean Services Agency. And then that discussion, those couple of days really allowed us to put together a final as-is document, and then identify what we need to do to create a useful generic to-be for our fellow utilities to use in the future. And that was awesome discussion at those work sessions. And then the job of the lead, in our case, for Portland Water on the enterprise risk management topic area. We went back and then we incorporated all the comments we received into the process with the idea of developing the first iteration really of the to-be workflow for further discussion. And then there were a lot of emails and team meetings to advance that process. Our objective currently where we are is that we are working towards the next in-person workshop we have in Anaheim, in Southern California, where our objective is going to be identifying what needs to happen so that we could finalize our to-be workflows, what is currently there, and what else we want to see. Generally speaking, in-person workshops generate way more ideas and discussion than the web meeting environments. So we are expecting a lot of input and improvements to the process. You also saw some of the metrics that you covered in this presentation for the business case side. Not that many metrics exist when it comes to enterprise risk management. There's definitely some out there, but not as exhaustive. So we are also approaching the in-person workshop as an opportunity to come together and create meaningful metrics for organizations of different sizes. And with that, actually, of course, comes the change management aspect of all these. Whenever you are thinking about your current way of doing business and then transitioning certain processes into this to-be environment, there's going to be technology, process, strategy, people changes. So we are also going to try to identify the more influential of those changes so that the utilities could be aware of what to do with respect to those when they embark on this journey. Right. So here on the screen is our draft is model for managing enterprise risk that we put forward at our first in-person meeting in Portland. This is kind of obviously too small, and my expectation is not for you to read this. My expectation is to see the level of complexity that went into this, and with the swim lanes identified, and the main part of this workflow covering the development of the strategic risk, enterprise risk, if you will, and on the lower right, there is a continuous update process covered. So this was our first thing, what we put forward initially for discussion. And the next step was then taking that, and then, by the way, this is the same workflow, but now converted into BPMN notation, business process modeling notation. Again, it's one of those approaches we're using to standardize the look of different workflows. So that's the same content, just looks a little different from formatting perspective. So this is an example of how we work together as a lot of utilities basically covering this. And then you'll see a lot of red text. You'll see a lot of comment boxes on the slide. This is basically, in real time capturing the comments and the discussions we had. There's really valuable input from basically our fellow utility partners into the process. Again, the overall idea was, okay, this is our starting point. We agreed with that, but what can we do and how we can modify this in the future to create a more generic to-be document. To do that, one of the things that we did was also the identification of business goals. Now, you'll have a PDF of this, so I'm not going to obviously go ahead and read everything, but some of the big ones here that this process specifically addresses that are important are, of course, lowering our risk profile, and through the involvement of different groups, them working together, incorporating the communication between the teams, improving employee engagement, which is something we all aspire to improve, and through this process, thinking ahead, planning, and some level of anticipation, minimizing surprises. Now that also brings its own advantage of cost savings down the line because planning ahead when it comes to our maintenance activities or capital investments or whatever else is going to be more cost effective than having to react later down in an emergency fashion. So these are some of the also aspects where other business processes outside of risk management can also benefit, and some of those examples of some of those links between different business processes. So those were our business goals. Well, but once we put together our recommended changes to the workflow to create this generic to-be, there were also a lot of challenges that were identified that may prevent utilities to fully realize the benefits of this eventual to-be workflow model. Again, these I wanted to, I didn't want to exclude any of them, so the slide is kind of busy, and you can read them in detail in the PDF handouts that's provided. But some examples that are, from my point of view, are important are resource availability to manage risks. Generally, everybody's quite busy, and everybody has their own designated day jobs. So managing of those resources and ideally in a timely manner is important. Perhaps even more important is the change management aspect, because we don't want to create this transition into this new environment and not necessarily follow up with the appropriate change management needs, may it be communication or change in our standard operating procedures or our technology, whatever it may be. We need those to support the new process, those identified and planned. And more specifically, one of the issues also was when it comes to all the input that goes into, let's say, scoring or what comes first, what can come next in decision making. There's always a little bit of everybody brings their own idea, so there's a little bit of subjectivity involved in the individual team. Now, that could actually be a strength, so we got to keep in mind, because it kind of like take us away from groupthink, different departments incorporating their own points of views. At the same time, different departments, different subject matter experts coming together and discussing things also will help alleviate some of those differences. I often think about this as like European Union coming together and trying to decide on a process. So these are some of the challenges that I thought worth mentioning. And again, I would like to point out that I included this most recent version of our to-be workflow. This is what we are going to put forward at our upcoming workshop in Anaheim over the next couple of weeks. And I don't expect you to read it. Again, just refer to the complexity of what is included. It has grown. We've added a new swim lane where it's called here scoping teams. Really what that is, is the implementation side of identified risks, identified strategic or enterprise risks. Now, great, so we've done a good job with identified risks, but we need to worry about developing a mitigation plan, a scope, a schedule, a resource need that actually goes with that, potential links to other business processes that would be affected to make this successful. So that is all covered under the scope of scoping teams. So we've added the steps associated with that as well into the process. So this kind of large, so it continues to a second slide. I used to here. So and it takes us to basically the step-by-step process. Now, this is what we are going to put forward and discuss in Anaheim over the next couple of weeks, with the idea being it will give everybody an opportunity to improve upon this. And once we are in a stage where we are happy with the content, we can move forward and continue to discuss the metrics and change management aspects associated with this workflow. And other topic leads will also, of course, do their part, and their workflows will advance as well. With that, I'd like to thank everyone, and I'm going to shoot it back to Mark.
Thank you, Mert. And allow me to introduce our last formal speaker for this webinar. It's Cello Vitasevic, and Dr. Vitasevic has 40 years of experience in the water sector, evenly split between working for utilities and consulting firms. He served 2 terms as the chair of WEF's Automation and IT Committee, which is now the Intelligent Water Committee, and he was principal author of many papers and reports, including WEF MOP 33, the Information Technology in Water and Wastewater Facilities, Water Research Foundation Report on Decision Support Systems, the US EPA Manual for Real Control of Urban Drainage Networks. He's also the recipient of WEF's Harrison Prescott Eddy Medal for research and application of computational fluid dynamics and solids liquid separation models to secondary clarifiers. And Cello is one of the principal investigators for this UAIM project. So Cello, please take us away.
Thank you very much, Mark. I'm going to just provide a quick overview of the scope that we're planning for year 2. We plan to continue the work on the concurrent tracks 1 and 2, and I will present an overview of the scope for each of the tracks. The track 1 really has to do with focus on business process modeling, and we will continue to build the business process models, each utility independently on track 1. The business processes and areas that they have identified to be a priority for their utility. These efforts are in addition to the track 2 efforts, where the topics of common interest are selected by a vote of all the utility partners. After they have completed and we've reviewed the business process models, they are posted to the appropriate place within the overall hierarchy of the water sector value model. So they're made accessible in this shared space to other utility partners. They could view them, download them. These could be as-is models that document how utility currently performs the work, or 2B models that reflect their design that includes some process improvements. This content also includes the case studies that have been done so far on the project, and these are examples of application of the methodology to different processes. And the knowledge base also includes guidelines for business process modeling and the typical scope of work for such exercises and so forth. Now, an example of how business process model can be used is provided from one of these case studies. This is from a case study done by City of Grand Rapids. They documented their existing business process in the as-is business process model. They also defined the metrics associated with that process. Then they analyzed this process and developed a 2B, a process that includes several modifications aimed at improvement. So they use simulations to compare the performance under the existing and the redesigned business process, and the simulation results are shown here, and they included a fairly positive impact of these changes. So this case study was led by Mike Stoll and his colleagues, and is from Grand Rapids, and it's posted to the UAIM knowledge base. So on track 2, it includes, like Scott described, collaborative work on selected topics. Utility partners form teams and they collaborate to apply the same UAIM methodology, in this case, right now, to 4 selected topics that are listed below. Each of the teams is led by a representative from a utility partner organization. Some of them you've heard from before in this presentation. The project team provides assistance, support, and overall coordination. The work that's been done here is, as you've seen, a result of intense collaboration and between these utilities. Getachew has provided a brief summary of the workshop that was conducted in September of 2019, when we had close to 40 representatives from different utilities. And he also showed that the challenges were mapped to this matrix. The overall results showed that most of the challenges that people were observing were related to people or processes. Only 11% of the challenges were related to technology. And we know that still that maybe sometimes the first impulse when we face the challenges to look for some shiny object that can solve the problem. So the distribution of challenges was also skewed more towards the strategic aspects and issues rather than tactical or operational. So when we looked at that overall diagram of how the value is created that Mark has shown, we realized that so far we have really focused on the business process and technology and who is involved in the organization, but not necessarily how they're involved. So in track 2, in year 2, we are going to include a topic that, a new topic that will focus on this people side of things, the issues related to workforce and the organization. So in year 2, we will go through similar methodology to document, identify items for improvement and design, but apply it to this new topic that is a bit less technical. And it will include 3 subtopics: workforce, organizational culture and governance, and change management. And we will again strive to engage utility partners to take the lead on these efforts, and their participation will ensure that our work is grounded in the real needs of the water sector utilities. So the first subtopic that focuses on organization will include the application of these first 3 steps to the organizational culture topic. We will review and consider methods for assessment, perform assessment of as-is situation, identify challenges and goals, and identify the sort of to-be state, the cultural parameters that are suitable or optimal for water sector utilities. The second subtopic is workforce. And again, in this topic, we're going to apply the methodology to look at the methods for documenting and assessing the workforce and engagement and so forth, and identify the challenges and goals and explore methods for improvement. The third topic is about this interaction between people and organizations that plays a key role. And the key role, because it's also the final 2 stages of our methodology, is change management. So this topic, subtopic 3, will focus on change management. We will apply again the same methodology. We will look at methods for change management, assessment of these methods, identify challenges and goals, and so forth. So as we look at this broad issue, and we're trying to achieve alignment between the workforce and the organizational goals, we will look at things such as motivation and communication on the workforce side, and governance and organizational culture on the organizational side, with an overall goal to create an environment where collaboration is not only possible but enabled and strengthened. So very quickly, a summary: this is the research that's driven by the needs of utility partners. It includes collaboration and knowledge sharing. The key deliverables are standard methodologies, knowledge base, community of peers, case studies, and various guidance documents. We would very much like utilities to join, and there is sort of like a menu of things that they can choose from how they want to get involved. We have a number of utilities that are involved both in track 1, where they independently work to document and improve their own business processes, and utilities who join teams to work on specific topics. We have utilities who participate in 1 or 2 or more topics. So it includes attending workshops and conference calls. So it is very a collaborative kind of environment. And if anybody wants to join the project, they should contact Water Research Foundation. The contacts will be in the handout, the project managers from WRF, and I listed the PIs and the co-PIs on this page as well. So I will turn it over to Scott Haskins, who's going to be facilitating the discussion.
Thank you, Cello. That was helpful. First, I'd like to encourage people to submit questions. You can't. You can do that in the window pane that is provided, and then I can direct your questions to appropriate people. The questions are starting to come in, and the first question I'm going to direct back to Cello. It says, I am considering signing up for this project. Can I benefit from the work that's already done? And what are the steps I need to take to participate going forward in the interesting workforce issue topic area?
Well, we would very much welcome everybody. We have some new utilities who have joined fairly recently. 2 are in the process of joining. We prepared a special area in the knowledge base for onboarding, where we provide the information that's targeted to enable people to catch up with the work as quickly as possible. People who join get immediate access to all the artifacts, the models, everything that has been done on the project, and so signing up is fairly straightforward. You can contact the people listed on that slide that I showed, either one of the PIs or co-PIs or the WRF members. The utilities made contributions in 2 ways. They made a cash contribution to WRF to support the project, and they make in-kind contributions because their staff works on different things and collaborates on different things. So I hope this answers your question.
Thank you, Cello. Good answer. I'd like to direct the next question to Mert. During the development of the as-is and to-be workflows that you described, what went well and what did you learn that didn't go so well?
Yes, yeah, good question. Thanks, Scott. So one of the first things I would say is that there is a lot of what we call artifacts, but really materials out there that utility partners contributed. So that was definitely a strong positive because we could, learn a little bit from each other how we approach the same topic. Because certain parts of somebody's process is a little better than other parts, than others' processes, and vice versa. Another thing that was really good was the in-person 2 to 4 days, these workshops where we cover our processes together in the same room, face to face. And it's like a huge, let's call it like discussion multiplier. Just being able to do that quick exchange and improve upon the existing documents is quite impressive the way it happens. Consequently or conversely, I think I must admit one of the things that didn't quite go as good as I wished it did was getting soliciting similar feedback in a webinar environment, because there's a lot of materials that we kind of need to coordinate, a lot of artifacts from different utilities, this big workflow. We have to keep in mind the challenges and the business objectives we're trying to meet all together. Also, bringing all that together in a webinar environment was maybe a little less than ideal in the web meeting. So I would say that probably is one of the things that I don't think we can do much about it. I don't think we have all the money and time in the world to meet in person many times. So that was one of the things that I think was not as great.
Good. There's a lot of questions coming in, and I'm going to try to get to all of them. The next one I'm going to refer to Craig Edlin from MCES, Metropolitan Council Environmental Services, speaking as a asset management director in the utility. What is the value proposition for a utility to join this project? Is there information the project can provide to help a discussion at my utility?
So I would say the value proposition for us, especially, and I can say it probably would help for just about anybody, is the value for us was really getting into and understanding the processes and gaining these efficiencies as you are understanding those processes, and creating cross-functional teams within our own organization to really get at the collaboration. I mean, everybody is people, and trying to break down those silos or start talking and working across silos was a huge piece for us, and that is a must for getting into a lot of these processes and start talking about and finding out the as-is, and then start talking about the improvements. And I think the methodology of getting in and really talking about the challenges is something that really helped our utility as we started understanding what those challenges are. Kind of, it went across more than just the process area you might be talking about. And as far as I do know that on the OneDrive for the project, there is some very good documentation as far as, like Mike Stahl's business case that he did for showing just how well that process might work for them and the value that they were getting from doing this work.
Yeah, good. There are a couple questions that are coming in for Cello, but first I want to ask Getachew, to address one of the questions. You work for DC Water, a large complex organization. In doing this project, what did you do internally in terms of participation to participate in this project?
Thank you very much. That's a very good question, because this may also give some insight into others to see how they can participate. So DC Water has actually a good representation. We have, we were 4, now we are 3 of us are participating. One is leading the effort, and we have myself and Kathleen leading, being the subject matter experts, because we've been doing CIP planning, business case evaluation, and prioritization for many years now. So even if we run a lot of very big capital improvement program. So when this idea came up, actually our executive vice president, BG George, who decided that we need to participate in this because there is always room for improvement. And we actually realized that there is a lot of things that we learn from other utilities, very, very good lessons. So what we are doing now is actually we are participating in the development of the process models. We'll lead one of the topic areas, as I said earlier, the business case evaluations. We basically, with the help of the principal investigators, we are coordinating and facilitating with other utilities and help and leading the conversation. So it takes some time. I mean, there needs to be some kind of commitment to do this. And internally also we talk about, okay, how are you going to use the lessons that we are getting, the resources that's made available through this effort, because the body of knowledge, the knowledge base that's created or being created is amazing. Hundreds of artifacts and documents that we have access to. So those are the initiatives, the reasons why we decided to participate, because as in our efforts in the past, we have tried to do benchmarking and identifying, okay, what's the best practice, but now this gives us an opportunity to create that best practice ourselves in collaboration with utilities. So us and other peer utilities coming together and talking about our issues, talking about our challenges, and also discussing, okay, where can we make changes and to improve the processes. And there is a lot of lesson that we learn from each other. So, and that means instead of benchmarking, we are creating that best practice. And that way, I mean, this is open for all of us, and there is a lot of benefit we can get. So, and that's why we put a lot of resource, a lot of my time, a lot of Kathleen's time, and Matt's time. And so I believe that we are benefiting from this, and also I believe that we are also contributing some extent to the cause. Thank you.
Oh, good answer, Getachew. Okay, go to one of the cello questions. There's a lot of work out there on change management over the years, or let's see, I have to scroll through this fine print on change management. What's different about this approach over the next year, you know, that's going to be part of, you know, this next phase for the people effort? And let's see, keep going here. Will it utilize existing tools and approaches, or is it change management applied specifically to these business processes, or is it more general change management? In other words, what's change management about, Cello, and what's it going to look like in the context of the people side of the business?
Well, thank you. This is obviously a very difficult area to get into, and we have every intention to use the lessons learned and the knowledge generated by other research initiatives, not limited to the research that was done within our own water sector industry, but broader research that was done on each one of these topics. We have a draft work plan for addressing each one of these subtopics, and the foundational approach will be similar to the business processes. And let me explain what I mean by that. There are a number of utilities who have not spent that much time on documenting their processes in a rigorous manner so that they can truly understand how these processes work, and also not in a consistent way, standard way, that they could easily share that with others. When it comes to these three aspects of that column on the left, you are absolutely right that there is literature on change management, there is literature on workforce issues and development, and there is a literature out there on when it comes to organizational culture and governance. And we need to look at that research, and we have already started down that road to see which one of these things are applicable to the water sector. I actually have a paper at the Utility Management Conference in session 34 that starts to look into this problem, and I think the title is Technology Silos Are in Your Organizational Cultural DNA. We often look to private industry for lessons, but we also need to understand the difference for the methods that are applicable there and in our environment. It is really difficult for me to answer such a complex a question on such a complex issue, but if in the handout you will see my contact information, and I'd be glad to share the plan, whoever is interested, the plan that we intend to implement, the work plan that we're going to have for these issues. But it will be different, I can guarantee you that.
Good, thank you. Back to Mert. We are a smaller utility rather than a large utility like yourself. How would we benefit from an approach that you've taken on this process, and is there something in it for all size utilities?
Scott, I had a little bit of like distorted feedback. Could you repeat the question, please? I couldn't hear you.
Yeah, and there was, basically, how do utilities of different sizes benefit from this process?
Okay, I'm having difficulty. Do you mind typing it into the chat box or something?
Yeah, why don't we go ahead and direct that one over to Craig. Craig, do you want to address that one? How would utilities of different sizes benefit from this process?
And I think every utility, no matter what size, is definitely going to benefit from this process. I have taken this process that we're doing basically with the UAIM and have started talking to our local regional cities, municipalities, and smaller utilities. Asset management is asset management, and it does not matter what size you are. It makes sense to do it at some level. And the way we're going about this project is to make sure that all these processes are scalable to be able to be used by any size utility. And I would encourage any size utility to jump in and really see what this project is about, contribute what they can contribute, but the amount of peer-to-peer learning that is going on within the project is going to benefit anybody.
Yeah, that's a good answer. Another question was addressed to me. What is the connection between this UAIM project and other industry initiatives? I guess I would say is that back at the very beginning of this project, an effort was made to tie it to AWWA metrics, to the work that WEF has done, to the LIFT program, to the effective utility management process that Jim Horn and others have been promoting for years. There are various benchmarking efforts that Getachew mentioned, where major gaps were identified through benchmarking efforts that needed to be addressed. And what this has allowed is to identify what those common gap areas are, and then to do, as Getachew was representing, to dive further into those areas and develop business processes that reflect combined leading practices across utilities. So those are just some of the ways where it's connected to industry initiatives. And Cello just talked about other research that is out there that has been incorporated, international standards that are out there that have been brought into this. So it really tries to say, here's the way you're doing business right now. And here, is there a better way to do business? Let's document those better ways of doing business in a standard methodology that take into account a lot of the other industry efforts. So I'll stop there. What I'd like to ask another question of Cello here. What would it's a common theme here, but you mentioned there are some financial benefits to the organizations by participating in UAIM. What are the key elements of the value proposition to UAIM? What would a utility gain from participation?
Thank you, Scott. First, I want to just quickly say that as far as relationship of this project to other utilities, there is a LIFT white paper that shows how this project fits in or relates to projects like effective utility management or benchmarking, because people sometimes get confused. So I think that it is there are two questions in terms of financial benefit. I mean, two thoughts that I have when it comes to financial benefit. We showed one example where process improvement led to very tangible financial benefits. And without having a good understanding of our practices and processes and mapping them out in a format that can be discussed with others internally or externally, it's not easy to even recognize these changes. In the utility that I work for, we have sometimes modeled the process where everybody does a little part, but nobody in the organization really knows the whole thing. And when you show them the model of the whole thing, they're shocked because they usually see just their piece. So the benefits would most likely be for efforts that transcend a single business unit, something that requires more collaboration and a more comprehensive view. So that was one example of financial benefits, but I think that there may be other benefits, and especially when we get into the area of people and organizational structures, I think that for private sector utilities, there are a number of other aspects that this effort can provide benefit in addition to just strict return on investment.
Good. I'm wondering if Mert can hear me or see something on chat, and he was having some technical difficulties. And the question was, who should be involved from the utility in participating in UAIM project?
Sure. Yeah, I actually can't hear you now, Scott. Yeah, I don't know what happened earlier, but yeah, that is a good question, and I think this also depends on the size of the utility as well that is participating to some extent. So in our case, while we were developing the enterprise risk management, our strategic plan that actually performed that initial identification of strategic risks for us. Our full organization headcount is around like 616. So through the help of the management team and the supervisors, we were actually able to solicit feedback from everyone in the organization that were willing to provide it. I think we are right around in that sweet spot where we could still do that. I can imagine if we were a larger organization, let's say 1,000 people or more, I think that may have been a little bit more difficult and more time consuming and a little maybe wasteful as well, because I would have been even more overlap in the comments received. Generally speaking, one of the things that is important is, because we're talking about business process change management aspect, identification of schedule and resources and utilization of people's time. It is important to have I don't know what you call it in your organizations, what we call a management team, but basically you need the executive leadership support and motivation associated with this. And generally speaking, the management team and their direct reports, the supervisors, for example, would play a key role in coming up with what the process is. One thing that I will just note is that we do not want to create a process where, an entity, a department actually develops something that actually has an impact on another department's way of doing business without giving the other department an opportunity to comment and improve on the process. So as soon as, even though you may not have thought about involvement from a specific department at the first place, but it turns out that they'll be affected, getting them involved and soliciting feedback from them will be important as well. So I don't know if that captured it, but I'm happy to follow up with any more questions about this if it hasn't. Thank you.
Well, that's great. Just a couple more questions. In Katachu, I think that somebody was following up on your earlier comments, and it was, internally, are you making changes within DC Water as a result of your participation in the UAIM project? Unmute if you're muted. I'm not hearing Getachew, so maybe I will direct that one to Craig.
So have we made any changes basically based upon the work that we're doing in this project? And I would say yes. Again, we're bringing the methodology on how to look at all of our processes, because we have many processes. We're a rather old organization. We had a lot of things that were just set for many years and no one really knew why. It's just the way we did things. This is a very good methodology for going through those processes and really understanding them, bringing the right people into the room, kind of like what Mert said. You don't want to bring everybody in, but you need to have the subject matter experts and also the people that really are going to get affected by those processes and work through them and have some understanding so that you can do some continuous improvement on it. So yes, we have actually changed how we do things process-wise, how we look at policies, how we look at procedures, SOPs, all that through this lens of continuous improvement, and that's coming from some of the work that we're doing with this project. Thank you.
Yeah, good. And then the last question before we turn it back over to Stephen and to WEF to close it out is there are some consultants who happen to be on the line as well, and it says you've talked about the participation of by utilities in this process. Is there also a role for consulting companies in the UAIM effort? Cello?
Thank you, Scott. Absolutely. We have actually, we currently have different levels of participation. We started this project just a couple of years ago, and it introduces a lot of new concepts. So it really is the utilities who have been providing the energy and the creativity for it, but there's definitely a role for consultants. We would call them consulting partners, and I see their role in being able to assist utilities maybe who may not have the resources internally to participate in this project, and make it easier for utility to be a bit of an interface between the project and the utility, so that they are really enabling the utility to get a better benefit from the results of this project. So we would very much welcome participation of consultants as well. And I also want to say that we're planning to, we're currently working on a business plan for the future, and we realize that there may be some utilities that utilities may, or people in general may want to have different models for participation. Somebody may want to simply just access the knowledge base and maybe browse through that or download some documents. Somebody may participate more actively and make an investment in resources and in kind or cash. So we're going to try to structure this in such a way to increase the number of participants, because we're basically crowdsourcing this knowledge development, and the bigger the crowd, the more the benefit. And I think there's a definite value proposition for a consultant to get involved in this effort.
Thank you. I'm going to turn it back over to Stephen to wrap up the webcast.
Okay, thank you, Scott, and thank you to all of our speakers today. We really appreciated your insights. Thank you to all our attendees. I just want to remind you that we will be sending out a follow-up email 24 hours from now that will include a link to the PDH instructions for those who are eligible to receive it, as well as a link to the webcast recording and the handouts in case you didn't get those today during the event. So thank you all for joining us today, and I hope you'll join us for our next webcast. Thank you.